Yeah. Uh, End credits of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, when I saw it again at the cinema recently, they were showing the preview of X-Men Days of Future Past, which was shown at cinemas after The Amazing Spider-Man 2 back in 2014. Um, it's interesting because I would have thought they would have cut that out, cut the preview out of the end credits, but for the re-release, they seem to keep that in, which is peculiar. Don't know why they did it like that. I mean, is this something that's on the American release as well? I suppose it is. Um, I mean, is it trying to persuade me to see X-Men Days of Future Past again? Probably is. Maybe I should see that film again. I mean, I haven't seen the road cut yet, so might be a possibility for future. Hmm. Where was I? Oh yes, The Amazing Spider-Man. Yes, I saw it again at the cinema recently, and I really enjoyed seeing it again. This film is the second film of the Andrew Garfield film, and the fifth live-action film of the Spider-Man film series. It's considered one of the worst Spider-Man movies ever made, which I don't entirely agree with. Now, this is how I see the film. I know people have criticised this film over the years, but I think the film is actually rather good in some areas. I mean, I do think I think Spider-Man 3 is better than the Amazing Spider-Man 2, but I wouldn't dismiss the Amazing Spider-Man 2 entirely, because there are some good ideas featured in the film for people to enjoy. It's just a shame that the film lacks focus. That's where I think the big problem is with this film. The film tries to do so many things, like what Spider-Man 3 did. Because with both Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, they were trying to put so many characters and elements for people to process. But I think with The Amazing Spider-Man 2, because they were setting things up for future installments with the Andrew Garfield film series, it sort of fell apart by the end because they were trying to incorporate so many stories and characters, which is a bit of a shame, really. I mean, the whole approach to the Amazing Spider-Man 2 is very different compared to the first one. I mean, and to the first Amazing Spider-Man movie with Andrew Garfield, and you can sort of tell that through the music by Hans Zimmer, which I stress. I think the music is very good in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Not that the first film's music by James Horner is not good or enough. It's just you can sort of tell that the tone of the film is different compared to the tone of the second film is different compared to the first one, and this is in spite of the fact that it's the same director handling the film. And I don't think it helps that the film has different writers for this one compared to the first one. I mean, the two of the writers were responsible for the first two Transformers movies and the first two Star Trek reboot films. With that said, I don't think the writing for The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is as bad as the first two Transformers and the first two Star Trek reboot films, because I was able to get into the story and into the characters, and it was very nice to see it was very interesting to see how the story and plots sort of developed, even if the character development is rather inconsistent. One thing that frustrates me a little bit about The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is how they handled Peter and Gwen's relationship. Now, the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone is still very good, in my opinion. But I wouldn't have split them up so quickly in the second movie, because I mean it was sort of established at the end, more or less, that Peter was going to keep on going with Gwen Stacy in terms of their relationship compared to. Despite Gwen's father asking Peter to promise him not to stay away from her. Now, I think that the second film could have kept on with that relationship between Peter and Gwen and not done the split, and it would sort of emphasize the consequences of what happens later on in the film when Gwen is killed off in the film. And I'll give the film credit at the adaptation of Gwen's death from the comics into the film is very well is a very emotional and dramatic moment, and I was pretty shocked. I would applaud the filmmakers for going to those lengths to see that Gwen's death is seen on screen. I mean, I was it was even for me, even though I'm not a huge fan, even though I'm not a fan of the Andrew Garfield films, I did felt emotional when Gwen got killed off, and the performance of Andrew Garfield is very good in that scene. With that said, there were things that worked against the film in that regard, especially with Gwen's death, because the build up to that is sort of revolves around the development of Harry Osborn in the film. Now, Harry is only in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. He was not in the first film, and you might think this is a bit peculiar because Harry was in the original trilogy. But you see, the thing is, with the original trilogy, Harry was allowed to develop as a character. He was given more time to sort of for the films to sort of progress his character along through each of the three films. So he starts off being Peter's friend, then in the second film he seeks revenge on Spider-Man for the death of his father, and then in the third movie Harry becomes the new Goblin, it's through the film that he grows from being Peter's enemy to being Peter's friend before he dies. In The Amazing Spider-Man 2, that was not the case, because Harry is introduced as Peter's friend, but he becomes the Green Goblin at the end of the film, which feels rather rushed, in my opinion. And I think they could have... So if the third movie had happened, maybe they could have allowed the possibility of Harry becoming, Harry becoming the Green Goblin in the third Amazing Spider-Man film. I don't know. But yeah, it's a very bizarre way of developing that character, especially in terms of having him introduced as Norman Osborn's son. I mean, the whole approach of Oscorp and Harry Osborn is very different compared to the original trilogy. I prefer how the original trilogy did things with Harry, but there you go. That's me. Max Dillon as Electro, in terms of being a villain, I enjoyed. I think the motivations of Max, in terms of him becoming a villain, are a little bit weak, because he starts off as being a admirer of Spider-Man before he becomes jealous of Spidey because he takes the attention away from him when he's in New York. But I did like the blue look for Electro. I mean, I think that's more in connection. That matches more to the more recent comics compared to the original comics. At least I hope so, because I think the original. I mean, it works better in the more modern comics of Electro compared to the original comics version of Electro. I think Jamie Foxx does a really good performance playing the character, and I did enjoy the fight scenes, and the music enhances the fight scenes in that regard. Not at the same level as in the original trilogy, but still pretty good. I wouldn't dismiss The Amazing Spider-Man 2 as a film in general. I think there are some things to take away from it that are enjoyable, but I can't deny that this film is flawed, and I know they were setting things up for perhaps a possible Sinister Six movie with Spider-Man if the third film ever happened, and I know that maybe Mary Jane would have been introduced in The Amazing Spider-Man 3. I think there were deleted scenes for Mary Jane in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 that I've not seen those deleted scenes yet, by the way, but I think that might have been a possibility if that film ever happened. But there you go. That it wasn't to be. So, and it's a shame, really, because I do like Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, and I would have liked to have seen a third film with him. But there you go. Let me know what you think of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. whether you liked it or whether you didn't like it. I'm sure there's lots of people who didn't like this film, and I would welcome anyone who wants to share their thoughts on the film. Anyway, hope you enjoyed my video on The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Next week, I'll be sharing my thoughts on Spider-Man Homecoming, which is the first of the Tom Holland film series, and it's also the first of the MCU Spider-Man films. But I'll get more into that next time. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the video. Look after yourselves. Take care. Bye.